Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into research that's going to completely redefine how you look at one of the absolute most crucial elements in human biology. Yep, we're talking about calcium. If you thought you had calcium figured out, well, get ready, because this data is going to entirely shift your perspective. We're not just talking about healthy teeth and strong bones here. We're unpacking the hard science behind calciumopathy and exploring a really fascinating framework known as AIC therapy.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, the true calcium signal. Number 2, calciumopathy and signal drift. 3, the 150 degenerative disease link. 4, the AIC therapy solution. And finally, number 5, restoring cellular homeostasis.
So we've all been taught from day one that calcium is basically just a structural mineral, right? Drink your milk, get strong bones. But what if I told you that is a massive, massive oversimplification? Viewing calcium as just biological scaffolding, it's kind of like looking at a supercomputer and only noticing the metal case. There's this incredibly complex electrical language happening right underneath the surface.
Section 1, the true calcium signal, the true master trigger.
Let's establish what calcium actually does when it's freely moving through your bloodstream. The absolute crucial point here is that active ionic calcium, which actually carries a positive electrical charge, is literally the master trigger for almost everything that keeps you alive. I mean, it's the relay for nerve firing, it's the timer for cell division, the conductor for your immune cells, and the spark for muscle contraction. Out of all the calcium in your blood, only about half is in this highly active, freely moving form. And your body regulates this tiny, tiny fraction with unbelievable precision. Why? Well, because when this signal drifts, your cells literally stop talking to each other.
The body actually maintains that precision through an infinity loop. It's a continuous 5-tissue communication network. So your parathyroid, your thyroid C cells, your kidneys, bones, and intestines, they're all constantly talking to each other to balance out those ionic calcium levels. And the language they're speaking? It's all routed through a receptor called the calcium sensing receptor, or CASR for short. As long as this closed loop is quiet and accurate, your body's self-repair systems run perfectly.
Section 2, calciumopathy and signal drift. When the signal breaks. So what happens when this delicate internal conversation starts to break down? Well, due to things like aging, chronic stress, or systemic inflammation, 2 major things happen. First, the supply of bioavailable ionic calcium just plummets. And second, those critical calcium sensing receptors simply lose their sensitivity. The conversation between your tissues basically goes from a crystal clear phone call to pure static. The signal degrades, and that vital cellular communication network drifts into total chaos. That is calciumopathy. Now you might be thinking, hey, I'll just eat more calcium-rich foods or grab a standard supplement off the shelf. But here's the kicker. Simply taking standard supplements or eating a perfect diet doesn't fix this. Why? Because most dietary and regular supplement calcium binds to proteins, like albumin, right in your blood. It never actually reaches the receptors as a clear ionic signal. Actually, standard supplements can sometimes worsen the problem by precipitating in your soft tissues and joints. To put this into perspective, think about astronauts on the space station. They have perfectly engineered, incredibly calcium-rich diets, yet they still lose up to 30% of their bone strength. Because without gravity, the bone remodeling cycle simply uncouples. Diet alone absolutely cannot fix a broken signaling loop.
Let's zoom into the microscopic level here and see how this builds into cellular decalcification failure. When the signal is broken, calcium starts leaking into the cell way faster than it can be cleared out. The cell's internal storage, the endoplasmic reticulum, gets completely depleted. And that hands the problem straight over to your mitochondria, which become flooded with the sustained calcium overload. This unchecked flood triggers a massive surge in reactive oxygen species, or ROS. Guys, this is severe molecular damage. This mitochondrial burnout is literally the molecular bridge between aging and chronic disease.
Section 3, the 150 degenerative disease link, the systemic connection.
Now we have to connect this cellular mitochondrial overload to the macroscopic health crises we see every single day. Disordered calcium signaling isn't just some isolated issue affecting your skeleton. It's actually the upstream root cause linked to over 150 chronic conditions. When cells lose the ability to read the calcium signal, repair systems just halt, and disease starts taking hold across multiple biological systems. It's wild to see how seemingly unrelated systemic diseases all share this exact same underlying feature of calciumopathy.
Whether we're talking about autoimmune disorders like lupus and MS, neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, or cardiovascular issues like arrhythmia and vascular calcification, beneath their totally different clinical surfaces, they all share a degraded cellular calcium signal. Fix the signal, and you begin to mitigate the downstream disease.
Section 4. The AIC Therapy Solution, Restoring Homeostasis.
So, if a degraded signal is the root problem across all these systems, how on earth do we get the network back online? Well, the science behind this next part is just incredible. Unlike standard supplements that form really strong ionic bonds, lose their charge, and eventually just clog up the system, anti-orbital ionic calcium, or AIC, utilizes something called weak antibonding. Because of this totally unique structure, it maintains a positive electrical charge, about 1 to 2% polarity, which means it stays in a free ionic state, remaining fully active and actually readable by your body's receptors.
The entire philosophy of AIC therapy really boils down to this: delivering just enough calcium in the right form to restore receptor function. It's not about flooding the body with heavy minerals, it's about precisely restoring the master signal. Just enough calcium in the exact right electrically charged form to wake those dormant receptors back up. And of course, safety is paramount here. Because AIC targets the receptor directly, it works by safely decalcifying cells and naturally rebalancing your biology, without throwing your healthy tissues out of sync. In a healthy body where the signaling is intact, AIC produces literally no measurable change. It acts purely as a corrective signal where it's needed and stays completely silent where it isn't. So it basically eliminates the risk of any dangerous calcium overshoot.
Section 5. Restoring Cellular Homeostasis, Systemic Recovery.
Let's look at the hard clinical evidence of what happens when cellular homeostasis is finally restored. Conventional drugs typically just freeze bone turnover to trap old bone and artificially increase density. But check out this micro-CT data. It shows that AIC therapy does the exact opposite. After 90 days, the number of bone trabeculae significantly increased, while the thickness remained unchanged. Now, why is unchanged thickness a good thing? Well, because it proves that instead of just artificially thickening old, brittle bone, AIC therapy actually switches the body's natural bone-building program back on, forming an entirely new, healthy structural framework.
And remember, bone health and whole body health share the exact same signaling integrity. So correcting calcium drift essentially decalcifies cells system-wide. In the brain, restoring that calcium transfer halts oxidative stress linked to Alzheimer's. In the heart, it restores the precise timing of contractions and stops chamber stiffening fibrosis. And in your immune system, it ensures cells activate and stand down at exactly the right times, mitigating autoimmune damage. We aren't just building bone here, we're restoring systemic cellular homeostasis.
It really forces us to ask ourselves a pretty profound question. If over 150 diseases and our overall systemic health pivot entirely on the precision of one cellular signal, has standard medicine been overlooking the master switch this entire time? By focusing so heavily on downstream symptoms, we may have entirely missed the foundational electrical language of the human body. This framework represents a monumental leap in nutritional and cellular therapy. Now, please note that AIC therapy is a highly specialized clinical tool and is available for practitioners only. If you're a physician or a healthcare practitioner wanting to learn more about decalcifying cells and integrating this framework, sign up for a private Zoom session with the Advanced Calcium Research Institute by visiting www.aictherapy.com. So if calcium is the master switch for human biology, what else might we be missing about the electricity of life? Keep learning and see you next time.